Hey everyone, and welcome to the Natalie podcast. Before we start, if you would like to find out more about how you can build and grow your business, head to the episode notes where you can find a direct link that connects you straight to my WhatsApp. Send me a message and ask me anything related to strategy, sales, mindset, and growing your business. I would love to hear from you. And if you know anyone who needs to hear this episode, be sure to pass it forward. So let's dive in. Nicole, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on. I say this every time now, but I know it's going to be a great conversation because I always connect with people before and find out a bit about what they do, who they are, and there's always a rapport there, which is great in conversations. And I just like to talk to people, and that's what business is about. Let's kick off by you sharing about you, what you do, and all around confidence, which is going to be the main point of our conversation.
Yeah, no, I love this stuff. So I'm Nicole Greenfield-Smith and I head up the Confidence Craft. So I basically help people, female entrepreneurs and leaders, to really master their mindset and just to nail their magnetism so they can have the impact that they want in business. So I always say it's about believing, achieving, leading, and receiving. So that's kind of the approach I take. And I started on this journey decades ago. Actually, I worked in advertising for many years, and I was just explaining to Natalie before we started this conversation that my big problem was imposter syndrome. So I had a job where I had to speak on stages all over the world, and present the research that I worked on. So I was often completely on my own. I'd get lots of very complicated questions. And although on the face of it, it looked like I was this confident person standing there, on the inside, it was such a different story. So I didn't have that deep-rooted self-belief. I was constantly convinced that any moment now I was going to be utterly humiliated and shown up, and my lack of knowledge exposed. I worked with amazing people in the industry, and I never felt like I quite matched up. I didn't have the same level of charisma or, knowledge as they did. And then to top it all off as well, the industry I worked in was incredibly extroverted. So lots of very larger than life characters who were hugely entertaining and fabulous. And I didn't realize at that point, but I was an introvert. So I found all of it incredibly draining. I'd get home at the end of the day and I'd just be absolutely shattered. And that would actually trigger the lack of belief in myself. Why can't I do this naturally like they can, et cetera, et cetera. So I battled with that for years, and no amount of training really helped. And it got to a point where I thought, well, I've either got to leave this because I can't live like this anymore. I can't live with this underlying constant anxiety, or I've got to do something about it. And my specialism was, the brain and how people work and behavior. So I really applied all of what I knew and what I learned to myself. I went off and I retrained. So I'm a neuro coach, a master neuro coach actually now, NLP practitioner, IEMT, which is integral eye movement therapy. And I took all of that and created a framework for changing myself, and then slowly started applying that to other people, and here we are. It's very successful, and it's worked brilliantly. And I love it because I genuinely believe that as women, we need to stand up and be counted, and we need to create opportunities for ourselves that don't exist, and opportunities for other women too. So it's a huge passion point of mine.
It's so interesting what you mentioned around the opportunities and the belief, knowledge, confidence. I guess what comes across to me is that you've got a great growth mindset, which sounds cliche, but it's true. And where does that come from for you in terms of that outlook of, right, that's enough, I'm going to do my own thing now, or even the ability to see that I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert, and have that's confidence in itself to say that's not what I want, that's not me. Whereas lots of people be like, well, I wouldn't have the confidence to start there. So where does that come from?
It's really interesting, actually. In fact, I've never been asked that before, and that's a fabulous question. But I think for me, it started actually. So when I first started in advertising, I realized really quickly I didn't fit the mold. So it was a very privileged environment.
Yeah.
Like everyone on skiing trips and shopping at all the nicest places and eating at all the nicest restaurants. And I came from a background that was the complete antithesis of that, like absolutely the opposite. So I'd got to where I was on my own merit. And I'd never really questioned it until I got into that environment. And once I got into that environment, I realized pretty quickly that, I've got to be different in order to succeed. I've got to portray a different side of myself. So that's where I kind of realized that I could change if I needed to. I suppose in that respect, I thought I'm not fixed, I can adapt into this environment. But what I didn't realize was that it would leave me feeling really like an imposter on the inside. But interestingly, because of the nature of what I've done, which has always been very research based, the whole ethos of research is you try things out and you learn, and you put a hypothesis out there and you test it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So the whole nature of the work that I've done in advertising has kind of always fostered that growth mindset, I think. So in that respect, I was quite lucky because I just applied the strategies that I would apply to my work to myself. And I may have been shamed by the things that went wrong and felt horrible amounts of guilt because of the imposter syndrome. But actually, I always realized that, actually what I need to change is what I do. And if I do something different, I'll get a different outcome. It just took getting to a point where I had no other choice, getting to a real low point where I thought I can't do this anymore, to really propel me into going into that deeply.
Yeah, and that resonates quite a lot because I was listening to Stephen Bartlett, so some people know and some people don't, recently, and he was talking around with Simon Sinek about you've really got to get a pain point, and I know that was true for me, and I'm kind of hearing that a bit with what you share there, and I guess thinking from my own perspective on that, I was at a point where like I didn't want that life anymore, and like, enough was enough. And it wasn't that it was the rock bottom for lots of people, but it was that slap in the face in reality that like I didn't like the corporate world I was in 20 years down the road compared to how I felt when I started as a leader, and the values weren't aligned. It didn't feel the same way for me, and I think that that's when I decided to take that change and move on. But I do believe there's an aspect of, like you say there, people need to be in a real pain point and an understanding there in that as well. But also, like we've spoken a bit about before this podcast today, is that you've got to be a place where you want that change and you've got to accept that. And I think lots of people come to, whether it's coaches, strategists, mentors, they want a quick fix. And there's one thing I'd wish I could give all clients, if it was in a little potion bottle, would be patience, because it takes time. And we know all the stuff we could be talking about here right now is about mindset as well. And even going on a change of confidence, all of that, the research point, it's all going to take time, but you've got to want that change, because nobody can suddenly do a magic wand and do it for you. And it's hopefully going to then lead us on with this conversation, talk about where we saw the leadership mindset work, because I think that's where we've definitely got alignment in our journeys.
Oh, absolutely. You have hit the nail on the head there. Unfortunately, for most people, it does come to that point of, oh my God, things are really bad. I've got to make a change. And that's literally just the way our brains are wired, because actually familiarity and sameness is comfort. And, we will happily go along feeling uncomfortable, because actually it feels more uncomfortable to make a change. So even if something isn't right for you, it doesn't fit, you still just carry on regardless, because that is just human nature. That's how we're wired. So you really do have to want it, because that compulsion to change things has got to override what is inherently going on in your head, like just the normality of how we function on a day-to-day basis. So you have absolutely got to take control and think, I'm dedicated to myself. I'm gonna make this happen, because no one can flick that switch for you. It's got to be you doing it, no matter who you work with or how much you pay or how many books you read. It has to be you that makes that change.
What is it about what you do with confidence that is different to other people? Because we see lots of people do confidence. I know I started as confidence coaching, and then I found it challenging because it wasn't tangible for the way my brain operated and how I wanted to work. It felt at times whether it was like therapy and counselling, and I was like, I found it very draining from my own perspective at first. And I thought, well, then when I'm finding it draining, I'm not getting the best out of other people. And then I'm not able to give and help them the way I want to. But it allowed me again to go on that journey, say, it's not for me, but I do confidence and I relate it to business, or relate it to career development, or relate it to, confidence in a sales conversation. So I like to make things tangible. What makes it different in the way that you help people with coaching compared to how other people, because we see lots of people do it, and we see if I'm to judge, which would be wrong, but if I'm to judge what I see, sometimes I'll see stuff like, you just got to be more confident, and like that doesn't help anything. It really irritates me when I see it, because it's just got no substance to it, just to say things like that. They're brash comments that don't have a lot behind them.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm exactly the same. I'm just like, no, please don't say that, because it doesn't work. But from my perspective and the approach that I've developed over the years, and obviously for me, it's rooted in psychology, it's rooted in behavior, it's rooted in communication. So for me, the difference is the fact it is quite tangible. It's literally just having that belief in yourself to turn all the thoughts and ideas in your head into some kind of consistent action. And it's tooling people up with the skills and the capacity and the belief to be able to do that. But the reason why I think my approach is different is because I treat it on two different levels. So the first bit is your inner confidence, so how you feel about yourself. So the relationship that you have with yourself, your beliefs, your thoughts, your values, your experience, your ideals, what you say to yourself, and the inner critic, all of those different things that make you are hugely important. And you have to get that bit nailed before you then go on to the second part, which is what you project out to the world. Yeah. And this is where it's quite different, because what you tend to get is either mindset coaches or psychologists, and you can get brilliant results with that, but that's only ever going to take you so far, particularly when you're striving to be an amazing entrepreneurial leader, because what you have to be able to then do is connect with other people and to persuade people and to put your point across and to draw people into your world. And if you're only focusing on one part of the equation, if you're focusing on just the inner confidence without what you project out there, then you're only going to ever have a certain amount of impact. You're never going to have the complete level of impact that you want to have. So confidence is absolutely a game of two halves. It's what's in your head and it's what you project out there. So your body language, your persuasion, your rapport, your communication, the words you use, all of those different things. And obviously with my experience, I absolutely focus on both of those. So it is a complete journey as opposed to just one or the other.
It's interesting because, I actually solely believe as well, like you share around the side of, you got to do the inner work first, and you've got to have the high self-awareness. Everything starts with you. And that's the lead to then self-mastery, when you got self-control, self-conduct, self-awareness, etc. It's really interesting because I've not worked out an articulate way to put it yet. I was on a treadmill. I love my fitness. I was on a treadmill a couple of months back, and it was in the evening, and I find I'm quite bold in the evening, whereas in the morning I'm like, I'm here, I'll get through it. In the evening I got all these ideas firing as well, and I was on there and I was looking around the room and I thought, I wonder how many people, so I'll never judge anyone in a gym. I think if you're here, you're here. And it said because it's people trying to improve themselves. And I looked around the room and I thought, one who's like an accountant, who's a CEO, who does this, who does that. And I just thought, I honestly have, when I work with clients on, again, being more confident in getting conversations and talking to people, like leads into actual real people clients, I'm like, it just starts with a conversation. I'm like, just have a conversation with somebody. That's what it is. It's not about a target or focus on the outcome. Just get in a genuine conversation with somebody and connect. Now, I have less fear and resistance to do that, and I'm very confident in just doing that. But I think that a lot of that now comes from the fact that I've been on my own journey. I've done that part of understanding self-awareness of who I am, how I operate, what I like, what I don't like, creating a life that I love, saying no to things, and having tough times. It's like, I don't have the answer to everything, or this is where I'm confident, this is where I'm not. And because I've done that inner work, like you just said, that to get the inner confidence, when it comes to things like talking to CEOs or talking to managing directors or any kind of, if you're in a room with them, I don't feel anything but the same, like just naturally very confident and able to do that, because I've done the inner work myself. Because I think that lots of those people have not done that groundwork. They're not, and they can be very successful in their businesses, but they're also very unhappy people. And I think it goes back to part of, if I took all the money and everything that I have that's great away, am I still happy? Yes. And do I have a love? Yes, because I've created that. And that inner work is the hard stuff. It is hard. It's not easy. And people say it's easy. Okay, well, it's not for everybody. It's the stuff that people negate to do, but it's so important. Exactly like you say, before you do any of the work of putting enough of stuff out there, because you're just not going to connect with people on a genuine level. And it's like the part about, like, we know coaching is it's what's not being said. Does that make sense?
Oh my God, totally. I mean, it's really interesting because obviously a huge proportion of what I deal with, particularly for female leaders who have created a huge amount of success for themselves already. So they're either, within business, they've created a successful business, they're several years in, they're employing other people, or leaders within business. I work with people who are CEOs of multinational companies, right? Who on the outside you would think, yeah, they've absolutely got it nailed. But the point that you just made there is, yes, it's about what is on the inside, because otherwise everything will feel like it doesn't fit. And this is the really important thing. If you can communicate confidence and show yourself as being confident, something different is going on in the inside, whatever you do is going to feel uncomfortable. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter how much you earn. It doesn't matter who you connect with. It's never going to feel like it fits you. And that holds you back and stops you from feeling joy and satisfaction, which ultimately we're all after happiness, right? That's what we want. That's why we create these lives for ourselves, is ultimately to be happy, to experience positive things. And that's where it becomes a real mismatch, because you're projecting something that you just don't feel on the inside. And that self-relationship that you have, your sense of self-worth, your fundamental value on the inside filters into absolutely every single aspect of your life. So, for example, if you're a business owner, what you charge, if you don't have a rock solid sense of self-worth, then you're going to potentially undercharge. You're going to feel bad putting yourself out there and asking for more money, so it'll affect your income. How you connect with people. We were just talking about body language. So I'm a body language specialist, and one of the things that most people don't appreciate is, even if you're being a badass faker, right, and channeling your inner Beyonce or whatever, you are still hemorrhaging like little signals all the time in your body language, your tone of voice, even the way you breathe, the way you hold yourself, you stand, everything is leaking little signals that I don't quite feel this on the inside. And then what happens? Other people absorb those. We're all doing it on a subconscious level all the time. Other people see it, and then the way that they respond back to you, they're not aware that they're doing it either, but it slightly changes. And so it feeds that cycle of, oh my God, they can see I'm nervous or whatever. And, it's every single aspect. So you have to start with the mindset stuff. You just have to create that positive relationship with yourself, because it impacts literally everything. It doesn't matter whether you're a leader, an entrepreneur, a stay-at-home mum, whatever you are, it will impact everything. So important. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, and lots of that resonates with exactly where I was in the corporate world. That I got to places where I was the only female at a table, and it was big regions of about, my peer group was 20 of us, and I was the only female. And at the time, I think I took a lot of that for granted, or kind of held myself back on things. And I didn't realize, where I got to and what I'd achieved as well. And all of the work I did around getting to that position was mindset. It was all around being empathetic, how a leader shows up and everything like that, and my self-awareness. Did I see how I was coming across to people, whether it's directors, whether it was my team, whatever? And lots of it at the time I didn't, and that's where I had to do. It was hard work, like, because we know change takes time, and I had to go on that journey, and that's helped me very much now. But there was so much at the end when I was leaving where I think I was killing myself. I was happy, and the values didn't fit, and I didn't want it to get destructive. It was like, it's all about them. I chose to be there still as well. I was there, so it was the values didn't fit. I didn't feel listened, didn't feel heard, didn't feel valued. The self-worth wasn't there, and then the self-esteem and everything is knocked as well. And you doubt yourself, and I was just like, it's just things don't fit. And actually that did have a bigger impact, because it was just my life. It was either going to the gym or going to work, and I didn't do anything else. And I guess I look back and think, I didn't really have much happening in my life around that. And that's where you have to have the awareness to say, look, am I happy? Like, lots of people will stay in that, because like we said at the start, that's comfortable. Chaos, uncertainty, and happiness, that is comfortable, whether we want to be honest with ourselves on that or not, it is. And this is why it's so important to know that you can change, but you've got to go on that part as well. And I think it all fits with whether you, like you say there, whether you're running a business, whether you're stay-at-home mom, etc. They're important journeys to go on.
Yeah, and it's so easy to live in that chaos when it's just familiar to you. It's so easy. It's difficult as well, because what happens is, particularly if you are doing well, on the face of it, and I use like the quotation marks, if you're successful, what will happen is other people will reflect that back at you as well. And what I see a lot of is other people going, oh, well, why would you want to leave your job? Oh my God,
Right.
you've got a really good job. It's secure. You're well paid. Like, you've done really well. Like, you should be happy. You should be happy. And actually, the more you hear those things, the more you tell yourself, well, I should be happy. I've achieved X, Y, and Z, without acknowledging what sits deep in here, the more you're distancing yourself from that happiness. And so much of it is about that self-exploration. So not just having that belief in yourself, but actually having the capacity to acknowledge what is really important to you and what you want. So many women in business go into business because they think it's what they're good at. So many. And this fuels imposter syndrome, something chronic. If you think, best example I can think of is my brother-in-law used to be a chef, a very high-end chef. And he always talks about the fact that he went in to food because he loved it. Like, he loved preparing it. He was amazing at it. He worked with Jamie Oliver. He rose through the ranks really quickly. And what happened is, the more quickly he rose through the ranks, the more and more distant he got from the food. So he stopped preparing everything. He became a sous chef. Suddenly he's managing a team. He's ordering the products. He's thinking about seasonal menus. He's planning ahead. He's dealing with criticism. He's having to pull timesheets together. Like, suddenly all the things he loved, that's just a small part of what he does. When you're in business as an entrepreneur, you go into something because you love it. So if you're doing it, I don't want to say the right way, but ideally you'd go into something because that is your passion and you love it. A lot of people don't. They go into it because they're good at it. That's another story. But then you realize you don't have to just, be a coach. You have to be a marketing expert and a finance person and a sales person and a PA. And, there's a whole load of stuff that happens that sits outside your natural zone of genius. And that's becoming difficult. So it's very easy to feel dissatisfied. So you have to stay completely connected with your core, because if you're going into business doing something that you just think you're good at, as opposed to something you love, suddenly nothing feels like it fits.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest problems I see, is women going into business and they chase strategy, trying to make everything right, but actually right at the core of it, because they haven't acknowledged that relationship with themselves, it just doesn't fit. And then
it's exactly what when I work with clients, we do a lot of confidence, but we do the mindset is always the undercurrent, and I weave that in the whole time, whether they're at that point or not, because it will come up and everybody will be at different stages. But it's so important, again, not to underestimate that. And exactly like you say, there's definitely moments in my life where I remember leading teams, and specifically females, and saying things like, I believe in you, you got it. But like, that's not helpful advice. And at the time I had to reflect. And I remember going in once the day after I'd had a conversation with one of my managers, Emma. It's like, Emma, you got this. I said, what's going on? She was like, I'm just not as good as the other guy. And it was the guys, it was against the men as well. And that's not always the case, but it was just like, just not found her place, etc. And I said, look, like I said, I believe in you, go for it. And I went back next day and I was like, that was really unhelpful for me to say that, because it doesn't mean anything to you. I'm just sharing it and it feels good. But actually, how do you work on that? And again, like I said at the start, like, we see lots of people just saying it out there, and we see like that term, and I want to ask you your thoughts on it, fake it till you make it. But like, we've got to be really clear on the steps people take. And sometimes when I'm mentoring people, I'll say things like, just start where you're comfortable with what you know as well. And that's not a bad thing to start there. We don't have to always have to throw ourselves out of the comfort zone, as we were going to not say, but we don't have to put ourselves into positions where we do what everyone else is telling us to do. Just really focus on, well, what feels right for you. Let's start in that good place. Let's build on that and take it step by step. But I think where I'm really clear of confidence, it's got to be tangible for people. It's got to be that they understand what it looks like, where they're at and where they want to be. And that's the great side of coaching come in. Lots there, but I really just want to draw on as well, if you to wrap that up, are you aware of Amy Cuddy with the
yeah, very much so. Yeah.
What's your thoughts around the idea of kind of fake it till you make it with things? Because that wouldn't have helped me if I just said to Emma, like, fake it till you make it, Emma. It wouldn't have helped her.
Fake it until you make it is a recipe for imposter syndrome. It really is. Obviously, I would suggest that we all have moments where we can dial our attributes up. So say, for example, you're about to deliver a TED talk. Okay, you're going to need to dial things up, right?
Sure.
But fundamentally, going around life and business, faking it until you make it, just creates that bigger disconnect between what is going on in your head and what you're putting out there to other people. It is not helpful in any way, shape, or form. Amy Cuddy is amazing because her work focuses on body language. So what she's doing, bringing the outside in. So for anyone that doesn't know Amy's work, she talks about power posing and things like that. So you use your body to create a positive effect, to get the right hormones going through your body to make you feel stronger in terms of mindset. So it's that brain-body connection that's there all the time. So that to me is a slightly different approach because again, it's like dialing up those attributes. You're not trying to be something you're not. If you're faking it till you make it on a day-to-day basis, you're in trouble because you will end up just not believing in yourself to a greater degree. It's far easier to just gently try and keep making it a little bit day by day, as you were saying, to make it a tangible thing. We were talking before this call about the fact I hate throwing yourself out your comfort zone just because the psychology of it doesn't work. The subconscious part of your brain is always going to be dominant. So if you're constantly trying to do things that make you feel uncomfortable, your head is going to get in the way and it's going to go, no, please don't do it. And you'll self-sabotage. This is what happens all the time. It's why we self-sabotage, because your subconscious brain is going, hey, I don't want to do that. That's risky. That's dangerous. So instead, it is about taking those small, tangible steps towards whatever your goal is and repeatedly doing them over and over again until they don't feel uncomfortable anymore, till they just feel like a normal part of what you do. Great example is live. Most of us don't like going live, but you get to a point where you're just reasonably comfortable with it, right? Because you've been doing it again. So that's how you do it. You bring things into your confidence zone rather than trying to jump out of your comfort zone, because your brain doesn't like risk. Yeah, none of us like risk. And if we perceive something as being risky, you're less likely to actually keep doing it. So you reduce that risk when things seem normal. And my God, then amazing things happen. You will find confidence snowballs quickly.
Yeah.
Hard at the start, but it's like running a marathon. Those first runs are the important ones. It hurts, your muscles ache, you don't want to go, it's cold, it's raining, but actually putting your shoes on and getting out and doing those first painful runs are the ones that get you to finishing the marathon. You can't finish it without those first ones. And that's the whole approach to confidence, is that it's little by little, and then eventually it snowballs, and that's when you get the real rewards. And that's the lovely part. That's why it's worth continuing with.
It's interesting actually, because I'm doing a talk this week on risk. It's my first speaking gig I've done in the business per se. Like I present in schools, I do workshops, and I did loads in corporate, and I present to 1,000 people like that. Yet this one, I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's like, Nat, pull yourself together. You got the knowledge, you got the experience, you know what you're talking about. But because I want to do a good job as well, it's slightly different. And I'm happy with the nerves on it, because I think nerves are good as well. But I'm talking all around, again, risk. And I'm just thinking here, I'm like, I guess I haven't looked enough at some of the psychology, because there's so much behind the idea of risk and everything. And what I'm linking it with is the risk, but the fact that the risk is not taking the risk. And I see that my journey of leaving the corporate and doing my business, lots of people would see as far too risky, would never do it. And it's like, but the risk was for me was staying in a job I hated, where I didn't feel happy. That was the risk. And the rewards that can come from freedom, but also the fact that the freedom isn't just a quest that we're on. We have it right now. And again, we have to have this or that all the time. And we don't really take the awareness of where we're at. So the aim of the talk really is to get people to think about, as much as the oxymoron, but see risk more safely, because it's there to protect us. But we don't, like you said, we don't like taking risks. It's to do it in a way that it's hopefully getting people to see, one, I want to make it tangible at the end, but see risk in a different way, is that lots of things are risky. And that's one of the things I share in there, that getting your car's risky, falling in love is risky, having kids, getting married, lots of things are risky. Fred's with Instagram, they recently spoke, this is a big risk for us. Elon Musk and Twitter, that was a risk. But it's making it seem, I think it goes back again to the awareness of, like, this is why awareness is always so key, that actually, well, how do we perceive risk as well? And that will help us when we can start to understand what it means to us, and taking slower steps on that. And it's not about having loads of big actions. It is simply about them having a few core things they can do, and knowing that everybody's risk, I guess, radars are slightly different, right? So I might take bigger risks than others. It's interesting to see. It's just interesting to link that in a bit to where you were talking about confidence there and risk.
Confidence and risk is massively connected, and you'll know this yourself. So if, for example, you're feeling unconfident about something, then you perceive things as being much bigger risk than when you're feeling confident about them. So you'll have seen this, people who are super confident often take huge risks, but actually at the end of the day it's about the growth mindset, because they know that, well, what, so what if it flunks, I'll pick myself back up, the tools to deal with it. When you feel unconfident, what happens is the exact opposite. So even the smallest things will seem like a risk, because you really don't want to confirm that you're not good enough in your head. Any evidence that suggests you're not up to scratch is going to really hurt, and it's really going to damage how you feel about yourself. And no one wants to feel shame or guilt or any of those things. So by default, your brain goes out of its way to try and protect you. So that is why when you get more confident, you do more and you take more risks. And it doesn't just go like in a nice little line like that. So there's a sudden leap when people feel confident on the inside, because their sense of risk is significantly diminished versus the people who are unconfident. So that's why it has to be about baby steps, because if you think about it, say if you're trying to jump over a bridge, there's a river running underneath. Well, okay, if you're not convinced you're going to make it and you fall in, then it's a very risky thing, right? You're going to get cold, you're going to get wet, you could potentially drown. What you need is a stepping stone to get you across to the other side. And you do it gradually until you realize, actually, I'm more capable of jumping a bit further. And eventually I realize I can jump across that whole river and it's fine. I'm not going to fall in. But, if you fall in that first time, what's the chance of you trying again? It's absolutely sod all, isn't it? So things like, for example, when people say, I want to stand on a stage and do a big speech. Well, if you've never done a talk before, don't start there, because what if it doesn't go how you want? Then that's going to cripple your capacity to do it again. So you've got to take managed risks until your confidence builds and you can go a bit further. So that's such a brilliant point to make. Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think, and what I love about it is I always just, like with my fitness stuff, I just fall in love with the process of stuff. I seem to have that ability I enjoy the learning. And I think that's really key as well. And to know that helps me with the sides of risk, and to be more confident is that it is a lot, again, going back to mindset, that I know that, well, what if, but it's like, but I've had the thought of experiencing not being happy with, like you said at the start, that you perceive to be happy but you're not, and it's like, well, but why don't I just give it a go? Like, what do I have to lose if I've got this, again, knowledge and experience, and I know these things to be true, and I'm passionate, and I'm putting in a lot around like loving what you do. When you come from a place of, when I connect everything where I've taken bigger risks, it's because there's also been a love and passion for something as a desire piece, and that's then, it's like the vision's bigger than the risk itself, and that's been key for me to focus on. So it's been a really interesting journey, and that's what I love, is sometimes just like healthy challenge and conversation about things that I don't always have the answers, and it's like I want to challenge myself to see things differently in order to grow as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That passion is so important as well, because that is what keeps you on track and keeps you going. You're right, it's the bigger thing. But also, when you're in a position of leadership and when you're trying to attract other people in, that's what they see. So if you're not entirely connected with what you're doing and you're trying to motivate a team of people around you or get them to buy into what you do, that's going to significantly hamper your ability, because what's on the inside shows on the outside. So everything has a knock-on effect on everything else. Everything.
It does. And I remember a couple of times I didn't get, I think there was one time I didn't get the next a job or something. And I said, actually I went for a competitor. And they said in retail, they said, I don't think you want it, do you? And I was like, no. And I was like, how do you know? That says your passion wasn't there. And I was like, no, I just didn't want it. But like in my head, I was like, yeah, go for it, you'll be fine. And then like that was some of the awareness part. I was like, I just didn't want it. And sometimes I've had to say it to people as well, that work on whether it's nerves and again, look at the resistance and the fear you have. Work on, is it the fact that your passion's not there, or it is, but you're a bit nervous, and that's okay as well, and we can work on that. Sometimes it's saying to somebody like, I really want this is going to make a difference, but it also scares me because I've never done it. It's really interesting. I think that with lots of this, there isn't it's just going on your own journey and being open-minded on things as well, and connecting yourself with the right people will really help with certain things as well, especially with confidence. Like when we said about that part of belief, I know there's moments in my life where I've been like, no, I couldn't do that, or maybe I don't want to do it because I'm scared. And it's like you're saying, no, I just don't want to, opposed to you're thinking I can't. And it's been the part of other people having belief in me where I haven't quite seen it. That's been significant as well, where they've known that, you've got the confidence, you've got the knowledge, you've got the experience, but you haven't quite got the belief there, but we know you'll now do it. And I think that that's been a key thing as well, is having the right people around me.
Oh, 100%. And that's so important as well. You just raised an interesting point, because often what happens when it comes to confidence, because it feels like something that may be a bit wishy-washy or intangible, which it absolutely isn't. But when you have those feelings, you don't really know what to do to make it better. And what I see time and time again, and I know we talked about this beforehand as well, is people who come in and obviously you think you go to the easiest thing to fix. So you think, okay, it's a strategy piece, or okay, I need to learn how to speak in public or whatever. You go to the thing that seems like the most obvious fix, the bit that is the result of having an increased mindset, rather than going to the mindset part itself, because that's the bit that feels difficult. And this is where people will struggle to get the results they want often, is because they're focusing on the wrong place. If you've got a combination of mindset and business coaching, for example, it's incredibly powerful. But if you're just trying for the business part without having the mindset bit sorted, doesn't matter how brilliant that strategy is, your capacity to execute it is always going to be limited. So it's always about making sure that you have the right support in place to put the structures in place to do what you want to do, and you're getting the right support at the right level. Always, like you have a tower of power, you know who to go to in that circumstance, and you know who to speak to, if you want some accountability. So you've got a team almost of people propping you up in the right area, and that makes the world of difference. It really does.
Yeah. It's been a lovely conversation. It's been really useful as well to kind of spark that bit around thinking about risk. And again, like, it's nice. I'm always kind of curious, has become a little bit of a buzzword for me recently, so I don't like to say it, but I'm curious to think about, like, that's going to sit with me, and I love that. So thank you for kind of getting the thoughts provoked around the idea of risk and confidence as well, because I know that's a conversation piece I'll be having a lot this week. Where can people connect with you and find out more about what you do?
So if anyone's on Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Becoming. So I spend a lot of time in there. I'm on Instagram as Nicole at The Confidence Craft, and LinkedIn, Nicole Greenfield-Smith, and theconfidencecraft.com. So you can find me in any of those places. I'm always happy to connect. I love having a chat. And if anyone wants to actually talk about this confidence related stuff, and create a strategy, then you are very welcome to jump on a call and have a cuppa with me, and we'll map that out.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
No worries.
If you like today's talk, go ahead and hit subscribe, and make sure you commit to one thing when you walk away. I really think this is a gift we can all give ourselves. And if you'd like help in growing your business, hit the show notes and find the direct link to me on WhatsApp. Send me your question and I'll get straight back to you. Thank you for your time.